Days of fighting. The Afghan government claims that the Taliban has been pushed out of the outskirts of Ghazni, although an activist in the region is hearing otherwise. The Interior Ministry spokesman says life is returning to normal for the residents there. Taliban militants stormed the city on Friday, trying to establish a strategic base with an easy access of Kabul to the north and provinces to the south and the west. And we are beginning to see the impact of the fighting. The civilian death toll is still not quite clear, but new video is showing bodies lying in the streets. Hospitals have been struggling to keep up with the number of wounded. Now, joining me now from Kabul is the UN Acting Humanitarian Coordinator for Afghanistan, Dr. Rik Pepperkorn. Thank you so much for joining us here in the program, because we need to get information on what's happening in Ghazni. First of all, is the fighting ongoing, and what is known about the human toll from the clashes there?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. The fighting, according to our information, seemed to have subsided in the city center, although on the outskirts, fighting is still going on. The humanitarian toll is quite extensive. According to estimates, and these are estimates, they are not confirmed, the civilian casualties range in the areas of 110 to 150.
Wow. And as you say, the fighting is believed to be still going on. There are reports of the roads being blocked. So do we now have a situation where the civilians of Ghazni, they're trapped in the city, unable to get out, and aid agencies are not able to get into the city to help them?
Yeah, that's correct. Highway number 1 connecting Kabul to Ghazni is still unsafe to travel for a lot of civilians and aid workers. So we need indeed to ensure that this route will become safe. I think what needs to happen now as soon as possible to save lives and reduce morbidity is actually 4 priority activity for coordinated humanitarian response. And that's first to extract the war wounded and dead bodies, to make sure that triage, a better triage can be done, and then when needed, the severely wounded can go to places of better care. 2, that the provincial hospital, which is doing a great job, is being strengthened. Some NGOs brought in already medical supplies. The UN also, through the World Health Organization, has been able to provide medical supplies and trauma kits, covering at least for 3,000 patients. But that hospital needs to be strengthened. The Ministry of Public Health has sent in an expert team. 3, we need to send in food and water as soon as possible and make sure that the power lines get restored. And 4th but not last is that, if needed, to extract the vulnerable groups, and thinking about pregnant women, disabled and children when needed.
Medical kits, trauma kits are needed in the city, food and water, the ability for aid organizations to go in and to extract, as you call, the vulnerable. That is what's needed right now. I was wondering if we could focus in the situation with food, because there are reports of food shortages. Do we have a situation with Ghazni effectively cut off from the rest of the world? It's a city of 270,000 people. Could the people there run out of food if these clashes go on?
Well, what we understand that the food is really indeed running scarce, same like water. Although some of the shops have opened up. What we understand against very high prices, so it's really an issue. So that's why humanitarian community is trying to organize itself, is organizing itself right now, and have to make sure that this food supplies comes in. As I said, some of the medical supplies, and on the medical field, this is already happening, etc. We need to ensure that the roads to Ghazni get safe for aid workers, for NGOs, to help the people in Ghazni in the areas I just described.
Your teams are telling you that the fighting is still going on in Ghazni. The humanitarian need is very dire in Ghazni. Is the UN calling for some sort of a truce, a temporary pause to the fighting, so that the civilians can gain access to need and that medics can be able to go in and help the vulnerable?
Well, a truce and or a temporary pause would be very useful, and I think it's been worked on. But what we understand, again, that at the moment the fighting, specifically in the city center, has subsided. So it's still going on in the outskirts. What we really want, the humanitarian community is calling for on all parties to conflict. First, to respect lives and the rights of civilians and to spare the civilian infrastructure, but also equally important that communities in need can actually have access to assistance and aid workers, and that aid workers and medical workers will be protected and can have access to the people in need. So part of this is, and on a very small scale, is happening. There's a number of NGOs active in Ghazni, approximately 25 in the province, and a number are active in the city. They would like to expand that work, also with assistance from the UN, and that's what we are focusing on right now.
Dr. Rik Pepperkorn, we'll leave it at that, but thank you very much indeed for the update on the situation in Ghazni, because information is very hard to come by, and also just the effort that you're putting in to help the civilians caught up in these clashes. Thank you so much, sir, and take care.